Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and today we've got a pair of John Lobbs. Come join us and check out how we're going to be fixing up a few DIY jobs that were attempted on these, and see what we're going to be doing with the whole resole and recrafting on these. So come check it out. So today we've got these beautiful John Lobbs, and the person who owns these, he brought them in, and he was not happy with his DIY toe plate that he tried doing on these, as well as the heels. I didn't remove these heels, and I didn't do that, and not another cobbler, but the gentleman who owns these attempted to do it himself. Not the best shoe to try practicing on, that's for sure, but hey, he tried at least, I guess. Sometimes it could end up costing more to try. So start out with something a little bit easier, something a little bit more generic as far as shoes. Not a pair of John Lobbs though, please. If you're gonna try it yourself, if you want to learn to do it yourself, go for it, but not on shoes like this, that's for sure. So we'll take out the shoe trees here. I love these John Lobb shoe trees. What do you guys think? Got a center hole right there, and I actually think, yep, I do. I actually have the toe plate that I'd taken off because I had to check to see the damages, but this was the toe plate he had right there. So I don't know, what do you think of that? It had the screws all sticking out through the top. I don't know, I'll try to post a picture here, but yeah, there was a little bit of damage to it, that's for sure. So I'll make sure to set these aside, set these shoe trees out of the way. All right, and we'll go ahead and get started. First things first, let's see, where are my markers? There they are. Still getting adjusted to the whole layout here, but left foot, JL for John Lobb, and then ticket number 3. There we go. That way we can make sure we track which heel base goes to what, because these heel bases, they're kind of fitted already for their mates. We're not needing to replace those or anything, but still want to be able to get them to fit these shoes the way they're supposed to. Give those a minute to activate with that turpentine in there. There we go. Now, John Lobb in general, they're one of those brands of shoes that are very well made. I mean, very well. And that's why they come in at a very premium cost as well. So anyone that has John Lobbs on here, comment down below. Do you love them? Do you hate them? They're all right? What do you think? I love them. They're definitely one of my top picks, but there's a handful of shoes out there that I definitely love. So now these here do have what's called a blind stitch on it. So basically the leather is split open, folded over, the sole is stitched on, and then that leather is folded back down to cover up the stitches. We're not going to be doing that on these. We're actually going to be putting a colored stitch on them for the gentleman. He requested, I believe it was green. Yep, yeah, brown bottom with a green stitch. And with a blind stitch sole, you wouldn't be able to see the green until it finally starts to wear down in there, but he opted out for the blind stitch option on these, which is perfectly fine. Everyone's got their own preferences. Now these heel bases, heel blocks, some of you may know it as, they are leather stacked, meaning that these heel bases are made of leather and they have individual strips, so they're stacked on top of each other. A lot of times nowadays you see shoes that look like they have it. Some people call it a wood heel base as well, but not a lot of brands actually out there still use the proper stacked leather method, leather heel block method. A lot of them are using a fiberboard nowadays, as well as plastics and wood. Wood, in all honesty, is definitely not a good one for a heel block. I mean, it might sound great and everything when you hear, oh, my shoe's got a wooden heel block on it. Might sound great because it sounds traditional. Yes, it is. It is a traditional option, but if you're looking at long-term durability, definitely stay away from the wood heel blocks. They have a tendency to rot a little bit quicker. They absorb moisture faster than leather because the structure of wood is a little bit lighter, so it has more gaps that water and other minerals can be absorbed into. And so just, if it has a wood heel block, it's not a problem, but I would just advise, if you were into that heel block, just have it replaced whenever you can. If we make a custom leather heel block for those shoes or boots, you could definitely expect longer life expectancy of that footwear. And the heel block is really on there. And I guess that kind of just shows the extra work that sometimes we've got to put into doing it. For any of you that might be wondering, this right here is what's called a heel pry. Slightly angled piece of tool like this that's metal. It's got a slightly beveled tip, almost like a screwdriver, but it's not quite sharp, not a blade or anything. It's really designed for us to be able to get underneath those nooks and crannies and start prying up because of that angle. So heel pries there. Any cobblers that are watching, be jealous. I got the black handled one. Anyone that's not a cobbler, unfortunately in our industry too, a lot of newer tools out there on the market are not what they used to be, and this is definitely one of them. The newer versions, they have the yellow handle. You may have seen me use it in some of my previous videos, and that one is definitely one of the poorly made ones, unfortunately. And when we say poorly made, because we have to use so much force sometimes to pull off really big heel blocks, like on Western boots especially, and there's a lot of nails, we end up snapping these. They end up bending and then snap. So this is one of those, like, oh, these things you want to hang on to, and I only have one of them, unfortunately, and it's off limits to everyone else here in the shop but me, because this one's mine. So. But anyways, I've got the heel block off right here. Of course, it tends to split in certain areas and everything, which is normal. I'm gonna go ahead and put some glue in there and then make sure it's all bound back together. Run a little bit of wire nails all around the edges to make sure it's secured and holding on nicely. And I'll do the wire nail once I've got the heel block on. We're still gonna run regular nails in, or gripper nails in from the inside. And gripper nails are like this here. They go in from the inside of the shoe underneath this leather footbed, and when they go in, they go through the midsoles or whatever other material they may be, through that, through the sole and into the heel block. And so not only glue is holding it on, but these gripper nails. And gripper nails, they have these little rings around them that once they go into the material, they really grab hold of that material nicely, so your heel block doesn't end up coming off. Keep that in mind if you have a pair of shoes that are slightly coming up on an edge, like on a corner here or here. That's very normal to have it just coming apart in those areas. It's just the glue that's kind of deactivating. That doesn't mean you're going to lose your entire heel block. There's a slim chance that you can, but you have to do a number on them to really lose that heel block. These ones are held in by, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 gripper nails. So it's not coming off. Even with fewer gripper nails, like some brands do, they do 5. I've come across some that use 3. even the three of them held the heel block on, and and then there are some brands that just overkill. Like they just really overkill, and they go up to like nearly 20 nails in one heel block. It's like, what? Why? For us cobblers, we don't like that. I think they do that on purpose for cobblers. They don't like us, I guess. Why don't you like us cobblers, shoe manufacturer and boot manufacturers? We're only trying to save your beloved shoes for the person that loves them so much. Some companies love us, I guess. I don't know how John Lobb feels about us. I know they have their own Recraft service or something available, but we're here in the States, so for some people it's not practical shipping back their John Lobbs to get recrafted. The other thing is, through us, with John Lobb, you're going to have only a few options. Through Cobblers, you have more options. If you want a blind stitch, we could do a blind stitch. You don't want one, we can do that for you. We can do a red bottom on it for you. We can do a blue one. We can do green, whatever you want. Different colored stitch, all sorts of fun stuff. If you want to make it a little more customized and personal, a handful of Cobblers can definitely do that. A lot of you avid shoe enthusiasts might be aware of all the great Cobblers across the US or even Canada too. And for those of you who don't, if you're new to the shoe enthusiast world, there are a handful of great Cobblers that do some amazing, beautiful work out there. So just check them all out online and stuff, just see pictures. Sometimes you don't have to have your shoes recrafted by those Cobblers. Just checking out their pictures, they got some cool stuff going on. You could check out ours too on our Instagram or Facebook. It's Cobblers, facebook.com/CobblersPlus, or on Instagram, CobblersPlusCO. And you can check out some of our interesting jobs and everything that we did as well. But I've got some thinner on there. I'm gonna go ahead and let that do what it needs to. I'm gonna go ahead and take off this heel block here, and we'll get ready to start cutting away off at the sole. We'll remove the sole and get things going. Now on these, we are going to have to replace the welt on them. Sadly, the material that the gentleman cut away at was some of the welt, and some of the stitching was damaged, so there's not enough material to try to just restitch that toe. Sometimes we could just restitch a certain area of the welt if it's coming undone and save the original one, but these ones unfortunately are kind of done for. So I'm gonna go ahead and start doing all of that and see you back here in just a little bit then. So we're back here again. Now we're gonna go ahead and start moving this sole. We've got our little rip knife here like that. This is one of my favorite rip knives, but I can't find any more. So I'm just gonna start splitting apart the sole. We'll go right in between the actual sole and the leather welt there, like that, and cut straight through the stitches along with splitting the adhesive. The adhesive's already deactivated from that turpentine anyways, so not much issue. And this is one of the things why I enjoy high quality footwear, even as a cobbler. This stuff cuts like butter. Look at that. Splits just fine. So, look at that. No issues whatsoever. Voila. So, this shoe here, of course, is not stitched all the way around at the back of the heel. It's not a 360-degree welt. 360 means that it's stitched all the way around. This one stops. It's a 3/4. Is it 3/4? I think it's 3/4 that they call it. Our what was the proper term? I think it was like 300-degree welt or 320. I gotta double check that. 300 or 320-degree welt. So basically, it stops right underneath where the heel base begins, and so we don't have to necessarily go around and cut everything. But this is where the heel pry comes in. We'll stick that underneath and make sure that we start pulling all of this up just a little bit on the edges, so that we make sure that we don't end up pulling anything up that we don't want coming undone. Just grab our pliers, and now we can be a little bit more forceful at this point. Still have to hold it down in some areas with our finger to make sure it doesn't come up in any way we don't want it to. go. So we've got the sole off there. Kind of a shame just because we usually grab these old soles and we trace them around so we can cut off the sole so the JR logo is centered as possible. You'll see that here in just a minute. But we just have to kind of improvise a little bit and be a little creative, in other words. Since I'm still going to be saving this sole, I'm going to pull out all these nails here that are sticking up. This holds down the sole itself. It doesn't do much for the heel block, but it does a fairly good job holding the back end of the sole down. Grab our heel pry again and start prying up this cork filler right there. And the cork, obviously, some people already may know, cork is designed to fill in that crevice right here where the sole, well, not sole, the welt is stitched to the upper, so you have this little lip right there. And if you don't have a filler of any kind, whether it's a cushion, felt padding, or anything like that, you're going to feel that lip all the way across. The other thing, of course, with cork is it's a great insulator, has great support features, it's more breathable. But after a period of time, it's a good idea to replace this cork just because it absorbs all that sweat and moisture and all those salt minerals and everything. So it's a good idea to replace it. Now, a handful of cobblers don't replace it. They try saving the old cork for as long as possible because it's broken into your foot already, and you don't end up having to re-break in the shoes as much, which is true. But this gentleman, he actually bought these used, so it doesn't have his own foot impression in them quite yet, regardless. So if you buy a pair of shoes that are used and you're having them rebuilt and recrafted, usually a good idea to have the full service done along with replacing the cork. Again, not all cobblers like to replace the cork for that feature where your imprint is already in the cork and everything. Just let your cobbler know if they say, oh, we don't need to replace the cork. Just let them know and say, this was a pair that was used by a previous owner and not by me, so I'd like to have the cork replaced so that I can re-break in that cork for my foot. And they'll usually replace it. Usually. Some of those other cobblers out there, sometimes they try to cut corners. If it looked great, like we had this one, we took off the sole and that cork looked great, just needs to be sanded up a little bit. I still prefer to replace the cork. Again, even your own foot sweat, all the salts and minerals in that sweat gets absorbed by the cork. Not a good thing to have in that footbed there. So now at this point I'm going to go ahead and finish scraping that out, but before I continue on with that, so I can at least show everybody what we're doing here, I'm going to take out this insole there along with the little heel cushion padding. Just a small amount of padding underneath the heel. If I can get it out. Come on. So just like that there, it's the bottom and the insole there. Now we've got to take out the nails. Hang on just a sec. Oh, come on. Sometimes we gotta do a little extra cleanup work in these. Just a little bit. So there are, I don't know if anyone can see that there, but there's the nail heads right there. Now some cobblers, what they end up doing, and even some factories too, they just clip off the remainder of those nails that were sticking out that go through the heel base and just clip them flush like that. I usually don't like to do that. And a handful of other great cobblers as well, they don't do that. We just clip them off enough when we still have the sole on so we don't end up hurting ourselves against those sharp nails. And once we have the sole off finally, we'll take them out. My preferred method is taking a piece of crepe like this that I've pre-cut for a heel, stick it in on the inside, and just try to nail them. try to hammer them down. Doesn't always work the way we'd hope, but it may take a little bit of effort sometimes too, but it's better to remove those nails regardless, just because those nail heads, if you have this shoe recrafted a handful of times, eventually you end up with nail heads upon nail heads, and then they just do some damage to the insides and end up being more problematic when it comes to resoling at some point, because these shoes, they could be recrafted and rebuilt probably for a few generations at least. There's no exact number. Now there is a number when it comes to how many times this welt can be stitched over top of before it needs to be replaced, and typically that's anywhere between 3 to 6 times, depending on, of course, the cobbler. Some cobblers, you know, they stitch in such a manner where it wears down the welt a little bit quicker, and then some cobblers, they take such steps that, you know, it lasts for a long period of time. Now, because these ones already had some serious damage on the toe welt here, we're just going to end up going ahead and replacing that entire welt strip there and do that. But before I let everyone go, I'll at least pull out one more nail and show you. There we go. So now we've got that nail head out. Now, don't know if you can really see down in there, but right here we've got 3 nails out so far, and that'll make it a lot easier as we're resoling them, and even over time if we're recrafting them a few years down the road or a decade down the road, whenever these may need to come back in for recrafting. It's going to make it easier on us in the long term, as well as save these shoes for a much longer period of time. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the rest of the nails, clean out that cork, get ready to fill it in. Actually, I'm not filling in yet. Forgot we're replacing the welt, so when it's time to cut off that welt, I'll meet you back over here in a little bit. But first I want to make sure I clean up some of this area here before I finally start taking off that welt, so I'll see you in a little bit. Alright, so we got majority of the cork out, and obviously, of course, there's a little bit more still left over that I'll have to do. But at this point it's going to be a lot easier once I start getting the welt out, because I have to remove the old stitches here. But before I do so, I thought I'd actually kind of show you the construction of Goodyear Welt. You can see this stitch right here. It's a lot more visible compared to a lot of other boots and shoes that I've done. But the welt here is stitched directly to the upper, which is one of these layers, the first one. The upper we mean by this top layer that you see. Another layer here that you can see is the liner inside. At the toe area, however, you can sometimes make out a little extra layer, and that's usually the toe counter area, because there's a hardened piece right here to keep that nice shape there. That's the toe counter. Now the heel counter has that too, but we're not replacing anything underneath the heel counter, so you wouldn't be able to see that. But same story, they take that material and they kind of wrap it under, where with a Goodyear welt like this, it ends up being visible just ever so slightly. After that, sometimes you might be able to see it as well in between the liner and the outer leather upper. You can see maybe like a insulation material, Gore-Tex, a number of different things that could be there. But on this one in particular, if we don't take the toe counter into consideration, after the welt, we see the outside top upper leather there, then we see the liner, and then we see this gemming right here. That's this little rib piece that you see that's white, and that's glued to this midsole area. Some call it a footbed, midsole. Basically the shoe is constructed around that. You know, so this is a Goodyear welt design here. A machine comes in, stitches that to the gemming that holds it in place. Now there's hand welting. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be hand stitching it, but there is also the next level of true hand welting, you know, where instead of having this white gemming right here, the fabric, you actually stitch it through a thicker material of this leather midsole area here, and that's a true hand welt. You know, some Goodyear welted machines can stitch through that, but they're you have to be very good at it. In other words, if you're somebody that does Goodyear welting, to be able to stitch through that. But majority of the times, custom made, bespoke, really high-end footwear, they end up going through that midsole and they stitch it in by hand. Now, John Lobb does have a number of their shoes that are designed that way, which are definitely a higher grade, that's for sure. All of their made-to-order custom ones and everything, they're hand welted, where this one has a traditional regular Goodyear welt. So, you know, I'm not saying these are better or worse or anything like that. They're still a very good construction, but gemming here, eventually it kind of comes unglued and it could end up coming undone. But that's another reason why also we remove the cork, is so that we can take a look and see if that gemming is still intact in all its areas, because when your foot perspires, the leather footbed in here, that's what this piece is here, the leather footbed will absorb it and all of that gets transferred over to the gemming, and so the glues can end up deactivating. So we don't really want to leave any of those areas behind if they're coming unglued, so we've got to make sure to get that taken care of. Now, I did take out the shank out of here. Now, typically, if the shank is well glued in, doesn't look damaged or cracked or anything, we leave it in, but because we are replacing the welt, I'd gone ahead and taken it out, marked right for John Lobb. Can put it in a little box here with all the rest of the parts for that shoe, and get ready to start removing this welt. One thing I'll point out, if you ever come across little plastic strips like this here that are sticking out from between the welt, it's something that you're fine with just pulling out if it's bugging you, and if you're able to grab some very careful pliers, just you can yank it out, because that plastic is actually put on over the upper to protect that leather, and then they stitch the welt on, and then from then on they leave the plastic on while they're doing the resole or whatever it is that they're working on. And so this plastic gets left behind often. You know, you're perfectly fine ripping it out, because that's what it's intended for, to be torn out, ripped out, and, you know, removed. So if you have a little chunk somewhere sticking out from between the welt, and most commonly it happens down here, which is actually on this one you can see it very perfectly. If I can grab some better grip pliers for you to see. But if we open this up, right there, see, there's a chunk of that plastic, and you're perfectly fine ripping it out. So don't feel like, oh no, it's sticking out, it's an eyesore, and if I pull it the shoe's gonna fall apart. No, it's not. You're perfectly fine taking some pliers or whatever and ripping it out. Just don't take a knife or scissors to it, because we don't want you damaging the welt, the upper, or any of the stitching. Just grab some little needle nose pliers or something, just rip out little chunks. Tweezers work too, so whatever might work for you. I thought I'd point that out, because you see that on almost every pair of boots or shoes out there that are Goodyear welted, that are manufactured. The custom bespoke made ones done by hand usually don't have that, because everything's monitored and done by just a handful of individuals, so they're very careful about not getting any ink or anything on the uppers, where during the manufacture of larger quantities of a particular model, because everything's a little more fast-paced, they put that plastic as a precaution there. It's kind of cool. Once you remove the welt, I'll show you here in just a second, you can really see those green undertones of this shoe, because it's got a little bit of a greenish tint. You can see here in the heel area where it rubs, but you can see right here a lot more green. I like that green. What do you think, Janelle? You like the green?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Comment down below. Like green? I like green. I think everyone likes green. But I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting this off here. And once it's time to pull the stitches, I'll let you check out what that looks like. Again, it's a little bit of a time-consuming process to be very cautious and careful to cut off that welt there. But I'll be careful on it and try to get it all taken care of. And we'll see you back here in just a little bit. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pull out these old stitches here. And it's quite literally just taking it all like this. Whatever tools and pliers, like needle nose pliers would work. Like I've got these other ones here. I'm just going to show you right here that you can see some of the white thread right there. And just pulling it out. And yeah, put a trash can there because I just dropped a lot of that. But that's all it really is. Nothing too fancy. Along with that, we'll take out some of that plastic that I was talking about. There was some underneath the heel here, but just going around and pulling all of it. I mean, because it's on the inside, it could be left behind. A lot of cobblers do that as well, but I don't like doing it just because one of the reasons is while we're stitching it, that little small white piece of thread there might get hooked up on the needle and come out a little bit, and it doesn't matter how close you cut that chunk that's sticking out, it might still be visible, and you don't want that. So I'm gonna go ahead and go through the rest of the shoe here and pull out all the stitches, do the same thing with the other one, clean everything out, and get ready for that new welt then, or actually also the cork I still have to clean out. So we'll see you back here in just a little bit. All right, so we're back here again. I started up on the welt, pulled this out so it's nice and moist and soft, so that we're able to stitch it on a little bit more easily. But we've got a stitching all like this. It's got a bit of a hook. I don't know if that's really visible there or not, but we're stitching it with a brown waxed thread. The wax, it tends to make the thread a little bit stronger and doesn't allow the thread to absorb any kind of moistures or anything because of that wax on there. Also helps, well, again, with strengthening the cord, but it also helps with the stitching aspect of things. Now, I could have done it the same way they did from the factory using a white thread, but I try to use a darker one, mostly unless it's a light colored welt or light colored shoe. But I'll use a black or a brown. I'm using a brown here so that in case the welt ever ends up showing somehow, which usually it doesn't, I'd prefer it to have a darker color so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. You never know what might happen, so we just end up having to take extra precautions that way. I prefer to do so, but there's nothing much to it. We end up inserting it right there. The needle goes straight through the welt, through all the different layers of material, and then I grab hold of the bobbin end here that has all that, or the spool, I mean, and just make a loop, and then I pull the extra strand right here through the loop, so it kind of locks up the stitch there. Just tighten it down by hand, and voila. This is one of the key things that's great about hand welting, because one, we're aiming for the original holes. So say if you send these back to the factory, they're going to use their Goodyear Welt machine and they'll stitch it on again, but the problem is they can't see the original holes everywhere. And it doesn't matter if it's with this company, a lot of companies are the same way. When they end up resoling them and it becomes standard that they replace the welt, it may sound great, but if you're looking at very long-term investment on a pair of shoes, I mean, I'm talking decades, maybe even generations too, if you want to hand down these shoes to the next generation or resell them, whatever it may be. You got to take into consideration, because the person stitching on the welt on the machines, they can't see those holes. So unfortunately, there are new holes that are created by the machine, so there's more perforation in that leather upper, the gemming. Some companies will replace the gemming fine, but the leather upper, there's not much that can be done with fixing it afterwards. So that's kind of a dilemma there, where because we are stitching this by hand, it allows us to aim for the original holes, adjust the tension where needed. So some areas of the shoe may need a little extra tension, tightening down the thread. So we're back here again with these. I've got them trimmed out roughly around the edges and marked up for where the heel goes. The heel bases are drying because I had to fix up the leather stacked pieces on there. And I've just drawn cut out a small little channel, just a mini one, just to mark off where I need my stitches to sit, especially because we have a new welt and everything on there. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and channel it. So this is our channeler, which is attached to our one of our heavier sanders here. So I'll go ahead and get started on that. Rough up the area where the heel block is going to be attached there. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we've got the channel taken care of all around here, and of course the bottom area of the heel block here, where the heel block would be sanded out. Of course I didn't go all the way around with the channeling because this back area doesn't usually get stitched, at least not on builds like this, because it doesn't go all the way back with the stitching. It comes back to maybe about right there roughly, and doesn't go any further back. With this type of particular construction, when they don't do a full 360-degree stitch where they stitch all the way around, including the back, usually your heel is a little more tapered. Everything's nicer and more slim profile instead of bulkier, because if you do the welt all the way around, it does make it look a little bit heftier and bigger. It's got great benefits to it when you have it stitched all the way around, such as the whole waterproof aspect, but usually like this, it's not much of an issue anyways. So you know, having that stitched welt up to right underneath the heel block is still very nice design, because you still have the stitched area where it's most needed, and then back here regardless it's just nailed on there. So definitely a good construction regardless that way. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and sand this area out here so that we can have it roughed up, because we are putting a finish on the bottom of this one. That way I can get the finish to bind to easier. And some of these areas where, again, I had to kind of design the toe, in other words, right there's still a little bit of mark left over from the ink. Most of that's going to get, well, all of that's going to be sanded out and removed. That way we'll get the finish on there and it'll look nice and ready for stitching. So we'll see you back here in just a little bit. Alright, so I've got the finish on there. Needs a little bit more buffing afterwards, so it's not all too shiny or anything. But at this point we're going to go ahead and start stitching it up. Actually, I like to start with the other shoe a little bit better. Make sure I got the depth right. Okay. Now, because we do stitch this upside down, I already have brown fed through the bottom, so the top stitch will end up being brown and then green at the top here. And we do have to take it a little bit slower, just because, again, we already have the finish on here, and so it ends up being a little bit more slippery. So I definitely have to be a little bit slower, especially because I made this a very narrow stitch for this one, and narrow stitch is better, of course, too. Shows more on the quality side of things. Okay. A little bit of the finish coming out of here. I waited a little bit too long, unfortunately. My mom was over here and she likes talking sometimes, so it took a little bit longer than I anticipated after I put the finish on, because the goal is that once I put the finish on, I want to try to stitch this as quickly as possible, just because again the JR leather doesn't stay moist very long. So because I'm also not spraying it with water, I want to try to stitch it as quickly as I can. And I was waiting a little bit too long, so some of the bottom stain that was inside the channel here was kind of breaking off in little crispy chunks. Otherwise it'd be nice and moist. But anyways, that's what it looks like there. So a little bit of a smaller stitch, definitely not the smallest we can do it, but this is roughly about what the original one was here. So goes around like that. Not too shabby. So I'll go ahead, I don't know if you guys can see that. I'll go ahead and finish out the other one, and it's kind of late in the day here. It took me a little bit longer than expected to do a number of things here today, and I can't stay here late tonight. Me and my son have been working on a little bit of a garden at the house, and he's at home waiting for me to hurry up and get there to get a few things taken care of while it's still light out. But gotta spend time with the family too, right? It's fun. I enjoy it. But anyways, I'll go ahead and finish out this other one, and then I'll be back in tomorrow. For you guys, it'll be just a few seconds, but for me it'll be tomorrow that I'll be running some clinch nails in here and getting ready for that heel block to go back on. And so we'll see you all tomorrow then. Alright, so now at this point we've got to nail the back of the heel, which I already did on the right foot here, and we'll use what are called the clinch nails, like that. Just a brass nail that's definitely longer than what the thickness of the sole is right there. But basically when it goes inside the shoe here, it turns into a hook on the inside once it hits this steel last or cast iron last, and it turns into a hook, and that's how we secure the back area here when it's not a full 360-degree welt like this. This will help during the process of, in case we ever down the road have to replace the heel blocks and we pry them off, the sole will still stay intact if we're not needing to do a full resole. And so that's how we end up doing it when there's a heel wren involved instead of a full welt like this. Again, with a full welt, you get a little bit of a bulkier, chunker build, but with a heel wren like that, when it's nailed down, you get that nicer, slim, tapered look for a nice pair of dress shoes like these. So I'm going to go ahead and nail on the other one. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 nails. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Rough up this bottom area where we got a little bit of stain on it, back up, and well, by hand with a harder piece of sandpaper, or a little bit rougher, and then I'll start gluing it up and putting it together. So when we're ready to stick them together and then start nailing them from the inside, I'll see you back over then. Alright, so we're back here again with these. We've got the top lift heels on, sanded everything out around the edges, and right now that we've got everything kind of sanded out and taken care of, before I do the edge dressing, I'm going to take this edge beveler right here, or beveler, edge skiver right here. So it's designed to skive the edges a little bit. I'm going to go through right where we stitched the new welt and just kind of touch it up, make it a little less sharp of a corner in these areas, because the edges are a little bit sharp and flared out after the whole trimming and sanding process, and it's a good idea to go through it all and just touch it up some. It's just a little bit of a detail, basically. Just like that right there. So it just takes it off and just shaves it just a tiny bit. That kind of gives you maybe an idea if you can see that. So it's a little rounded and a little sharp there, kind of flared up because of that. We want to make it nice looking. Small little details like that can make a world of difference sometimes. I mean, Some shoes call for having this done, some not so much, and this is definitely one of those shoes that we definitely want to do that to, just because it is more of a dress shoe. Western boots, for example, or work boots, however, they tend to have a little bit more of a sharper edge, but a nice elegant dress shoe needs a smoother finish on them. So I've got the other one taken care of as well. Got it all touched up so it's a little bit more rounded. Gonna go ahead and blow off all the dust, and got that gentleman's notch sanded in there too. And now I'm gonna go ahead and edge it, do an edge inking and varnish on there. I'm not gonna take up too much time with that, because next up is gonna be the nailing. We're gonna go ahead and run some decorative and functional nails in these. So let me go ahead and get the edges taken care of, and I'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, so I almost completely forgot. We still had to run the nails into the bottom, the heel bases here. I've already marked them up and punched a majority of the holes in this one here, and not so much the heel bases, but more of the top lift of the heel. So what I start out with is using a compass tool, kind of like this. Measures out 1 centimeter for me, markings. Makes it a little more accurate. I could eyeball it, but you know, if I have a tool like this that I can mark it with, it makes it a lot easier. You know, just go down here and press it into the leather a little bit, and that's it. Now, as far as my punch tool, I just use the awl like that there, and this awl allows me to punch a hole in there before I start running the nails in. Now I'm on my last two. 1, 2. And I can technically run the nails in right away, but the problem is that it is, after all, a thin piece of metal basically in the nails. They're not really large and bulky. You don't want to use anything huge that sticks out like a sore thumb. You know, so the problem is if I start putting it in and nailing it in, I have to be careful not to let the nails bend or snap, because it damages the finish on the bottom, and I don't want that. I want it to look nice. You know, it makes me feel horrible if it looks bad. Yes, it's kind of just an aesthetics thing, and it's not going to stay perfect after the first or maybe second wear even, but going out that door, I want them to look nice. Those small little details can make a world of difference, you know, for a pair of shoes, at least appearance wise, of course. So I'll run these nails in, and these particular nails here I actually had to order from Europe some time ago, because I could not find anything even remotely close here in the US for it, which is kind of a shame. But I'll probably see if I can get some more in, and maybe once we get our website up and running, maybe by the time this video is even up already, we may have our website up and running, and start selling them on there for anyone who's kind of like a hobbyist, or even for some of the cobblers too that are having trouble getting their hands on it. And hopefully I have our website up and running fully by then, just because I'd like to be able to, you know, have our services listed on there, as well as the products we currently sell in store, and then some odds and ends like these nails here. And we'll see how that goes, but I'll keep everybody posted on Facebook, Instagram, on our website, or you know, our website would be all updated and revamped by then. But also I'll definitely post it here on YouTube, letting everybody know that our website has changed a little bit. But now at this point, I'm grabbing our other flat-headed punch tool like this, and just hammering these nails in just a little bit deeper. If they cooperate. There we go. I gotta punch them down just a little bit deeper to get them to sit a little bit below the leather. That way it doesn't end up becoming very slippery or anything like that when this gentleman's wearing them. I mean, it usually isn't, just because first point of impact is that rubber section of the heel, and that'll grip fairly well, but Everyone's got a different walking pattern. I've had some people who ended up sliding on them just because the nails stuck out a little bit too high, and definitely learned my lesson from then to have them sit down a little bit lower. Don't know if it's something you can see on the camera at all there, but yep, there we go. Now we got the nails on there. Gonna buff that up a little bit, get some waxes back into the nooks and crannies wherever it may need to go, and also finish out this other one. So I'll be back in just a little bit to get them all taken care of. All right, everyone, so we've got them all buffed up. You can see got a nice shine and everything. Got the soles on here, JR heels, green stitching. Now, before I finish it off, I've got the shoe trees in these, and of course, obviously for when they get picked up display purposes, I wanted to show you a nice knot, if anyone's not familiar with it, what's called a Berluti knot. So Berluti knot basically almost ends up being like a double knot, just a lot more elegant looking and a lot more efficient and functional. So we start out with the Berluti knot by doing first a crisscross like you would usually, and then you do the bunny ear system. Yes, I know, like childhood bunny ears. We do our usual knot, but about halfway through, we've got the first loop that goes through, and then we take the second bunny ear and loop it through as well. So basically, end up with a nice little knot like that. There we go. So it's got these two little posts here basically, and it's going to hold up a lot better. And you can mess around with it, practice a little bit to get these ends here to hang down lower and everything, or get it just right. But I'll show you one more time real quick here. So we've got it loose here. We'll do a regular crisscross knot like that. Bunny ears. Sorry, I don't know if the light is not good enough or what exactly. Gotta see what I can do about it here. But you do the loop, you crisscross them. Take this loop, put it underneath, or bunny ear, I'm sorry. Put it underneath there, and then the other one, you go back around the opposite way. And then you grab both ends and cinch it down nice and tight. And voila. This knot looks a lot better than a regular double knot. I mean, again, with a little bit of practice, you can figure out which way you want it to go and everything. And take some experimenting. I'm still getting the hang of which way I need to loop which knot, and or each bunny ear and everything, as well as making the initial knot. But it's going to get covered up anyways. But regardless, it's a lot better than your regular double knot. And as far as undoing it, it's very simple. You just pull and it's back to what it was here. But let me try it a different way. Let's see, let's go that way and that way, that way. Oops. Come on. Oh, so close. All right. Start over again. It's like a handicap here for me. What? I'm having some serious technical difficulties here. There we go. It's not perfect again. It's upside down. I think. Well, I have to mess around with it and fix it up some, but kind of gives you an idea of how it's supposed to go there. And again, it's a matter of messing around and seeing which direction or which loop goes over which, or strand with the lace goes over which side and everything. So it's a matter of getting the hang of it, but I thought I'd show everybody, you know, a little bit more up close. It's a really awesome knot, very useful, very functional. It looks a lot better than your standard double knot, because I do see a lot of shoes come in where gentlemen don't tend to like to lace up their shoes and everything and then double knot them and leave them like that. I highly recommend that you actually undo the laces and tie them up each and every time, especially on a nice pair of dress shoes like this. But if you're very adamant about it, then at least go this method with the Berluti knot, and be sure you're using some shoe horns. I've got one like that there, but it's just a little card-like shoehorn that fits in your wallet, in your pocket. It's designed to go on the underneath your heel like this, so when you're putting your foot in, you press straight down, it folds and turns into basically a mini shoehorn. Very functional, looks very nice and elegant, and definitely a useful tool to have for a gentleman with a nice pair of shoes like this. Even for some of the ladies as well. I know a lot of ladies have the pump heels, and some of them are a little bit of a pain to put on. So definitely check these out. Shoe Slides, go to their website, shoeslides.com. I'll leave a link in the description, and hopefully we'll have them posted on our site here soon as well. These guys go for, I gotta double check the price. I thought it was like $2.95 on them, but I'll double check. You can go to their website again as always and check them out and see how they work. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're done with John Lobb's recrafting. New welt on there completely. Got the JR leather, John Redenbach oak bark tanned leather soles, the JR leather combination heel there with some brass tacking, and of course upper treatment with the Saphir Medaille Dior and our own blend of desalting agent basically. But very beautiful shoe. Had some serious damage on it. I mean, that toe is still wanting to be a little bit fishy, but if the gentleman decides to go a different route, maybe like a patina, that's what I would usually recommend if the toe is damaged like that. You know, it's a really deep gouge, and because of the coloring on it, restoring it back to what it was originally doesn't work out very well. And the reason why I say that is because different leathers, different tanneries will treat their leathers in different methods. I mean, John Lobb, they don't really make their own leather. They buy the highest quality leather that they can get their hands on without doing anything to the leather themselves. They don't do anything short of conditioning it, but even polishing it. They don't apply any kind of product for polish, for any kind of creams or waxes. I mean, even conditioners, they're a little finicky from what I understand as well. So out of the box, definitely want to do something about those John Lobbs if you're getting yourself a pair brand new, because they're not treated from the factory, but they're still a very beautiful shoe. And that's why I just wanted to point out that, you know, doing this right here, it may react a little odd just because the dyes have different solutions mixed into them, alcohols, certain turpentines, sometimes oils as well, and pigment. And so when you put it on a pair of shoes or some kind of leather that was already treated and dyed beforehand, it doesn't always have the same reaction. It can have some form of chemical reaction where you get something completely different, unless you're going black. Black is one thing, or all dark brown, or well, even navy blue is a little bit finicky, but I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, so if you ever have damage like that on the toes and you have a shoe like this, getting a patina might be the best option to go with it, unless you're wanting to experiment with it yourself or have somebody that'd be willing to do it. Unfortunately, at this time, I wouldn't want to do it. It's a very time-consuming thing. We have enough backlog with what we're doing at the moment. A patina would be a much better solution than having to try to experiment with it and a lot of trial and error, because we would unfortunately have to charge, you know, for even failure basically on something like that there. And just because, you know, we put in half an hour or 2 hours worth, that's a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work. So I thought I'd point that out. But hope you enjoyed this video for a full recraft on these beautiful John Lobbs here. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below, or stop on by if you're local here in the Denver area. If you're not local, you could always go to our website, CobblersPlusCO, and check us out. All of our contact information is on there. And like I mentioned, we are working at the moment, at the time of this recording, to build up our website so that we have all the products that we carry and all of our services, well, at least majority of our services listed, so that you can more efficiently ship in your repairs if you need to, if you're out of state, or place an order for any products as well. So keep an eye out for that, unless it's already up, but otherwise at the moment there's a lot of great information on our website. Again, CobblersPlus.com, check us out there. And if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up on that. Hit the subscribe button if you plan to watch more videos like this. I know some of our videos are a little bit longer than most other videos out there, but we try to get into the finer details about certain things. So definitely hit that subscribe button if you've been enjoying it and want to see more, and hit that notification bell icon for when we have our next video released and posted. And we'll see you next time.